All right, hey, it's Rob Disner, and I'm going to talk a little off the cuff here about my time spent in the studio with Michael Jackson. I was a studio runner or a gopher for 2 years, closer to 3 years maybe, that I worked at that studio on Michael Jackson's Dangerous project. So I was there from not exactly the beginning, but pretty much at the beginning, and there every day until the record was finally released. And yeah, had a lot of interesting experiences. Obviously, being around someone like Michael Jackson, I think now I appreciate it way more. At the time, it was just my job. It was a place I worked. I knew famous people were there, and I wasn't a huge MJ fan or anything. And it wasn't the days of the internet. It wasn't, so hyped up. Everything Everything pretty much was more low key back then. It was a closed off studio with a wall and a gate, and people weren't really outside screaming for him or anything like that. I think most people, once in a while, someone found out, but most of the time, people really didn't know he was in there. They couldn't see him getting in and out of his car or anything, and so things were pretty calm. We didn't have to really deal with all that hype, and all the allegations and all that kind of stuff came out kind of the year after Dangerous was released, so we didn't have to deal with any of that terrible stuff either. I'll go into that in a little bit as well, but anyway, I did publish a Kindle book called My Brush with Badness, and we'll go over a lot of the same stories, just in a kind of off-the-cuff manner here. I apologize, I'm getting over a slight case of COVID at the moment, so I'm a little stuffed up and sniffly, and I'm playing ball with my doggy Diego. All right, buddy. Anyway, so yeah, this video, I will say, first of all, is brought to you by Bai. If you want to say bye-bye to your thirst, buy some Bai. It's delicious. This is blueberry. It's fabulous. Anyway, so yeah, right at the beginning of 1990, I had moved out to LA in 89. I worked for 6 months at a place called the Record Plant. I got kind of restless. I wasn't moving up in my field. Thought I'd try somewhere else. Ended up at this place called Ocean Way. I remember for $1 less an hour, I was making, I think, $6.10 at the Record Plant, and I went down to $5.10 at Ocean Way. So yeah, wasn't really raking it in. Anyway, I happened to live close to this studio that Ocean Way owned called Record One. And after a couple months of working at Ocean Way in Los Angeles proper on Sunset Boulevard, they said, hey, you're a clean-cut guy. Why don't you go work for us at our other studio in Sherman Oaks, which was great. I could walk. I lived right down the street. It wasn't far at all from me. So I worked at the studio called Record One on Ventura Boulevard in the Valley. And no sooner did I get there, or maybe it was already going on, I believe, Michael Jackson moved in for his Dangerous project. So I was there for 2 years, pretty much every day, every weekday at least. Not just me, but there was 3 or 4 people at the studio at the time. There were 3 or 4 people who did this job called the runner, the gopher. And you would just look after the studio. You might answer the phones, although we had a receptionist. You might clean up things in the studio. You definitely would go on a lot of errands. I had a 1984 VW GTI at the time that I had taken the back seat out of, so it was like a little mini station wagon hatchback, and carried a lot of stuff around in that for the Dangerous project, tapes and equipment and that sort of thing. Anyway, so to go to the beginning, I started working there. Michael came in. He was pretty shy, and we eventually got to the point where, we could converse at kind of a minimal level. I mean, one day he came in, I remember he would talk about maybe things going on in the world at the time, and he used to call me Robbie. He'd say, Robbie, are you going to the war? It was Desert Storm. And I said, no, Michael, I'll probably stay here. Didn't have much interest in that. And he said, oh, that's good. You could die. And then he would walk away, and that would be it. So that'd be about the level of my interactions with him. I was certainly comfortable around him. I think he enjoyed being around me. He would laugh, when I would make jokes or whatever. I try to keep things light and try to, of course, also be professional. I realized, if I don't follow through with any of the things I'm supposed to do with this job, I mean, they could find anyone to come in and do this. Back then, it was a different time. We didn't have the internet. There wasn't just all the hype that we have now. Thankfully, also, we didn't have the allegations and all this stuff going on, which happened after Dangerous was released, so we weren't in the middle of all of that. Nobody really knew that he was in the studio or not. It was gated. It had a wall. You had to hit a code to come in or whatever. And so for the most part, people didn't really know he was there doing anything, and we would deal with any outside interruptions. So I began working, at this studio, and Michael was there every day running 3 different rooms. He had a room where a guy named Brian Loren was doing songs, and a room where both Bruce Swedien and Bill Bottrell were kind of leapfrogging, working on different songs. And there was a 3rd room where there was a guy named Matt Forger. He was kind of doing editing and maybe putting together different components of the things they were working on in the other studios. He was always in there busy doing something. But it was a real small room. I didn't spend much time in there or really know much about what was going on in there. He was kind of in and out. It was very political. Obviously, there's a lot on the line when you're trying to get a song that you worked on a Michael Jackson record. So everyone was pushing to, work on their songs as much as possible to get Michael to sing on the songs they were working on, as often as they could, so they would be building up more material and there'd be more of a chance that these songs would end up on the record. I think there was an estimate, maybe 40 different songs they worked on. I don't think they worked on that many when, I was there in the studio, but we certainly probably heard 20, 25 songs going in and out of those rooms. And again, I was not in the room when it was happening. I was out in the front in the reception area. I occasionally got to go in. I maybe lingered for a little while. Once in a while, maybe I'd get to just be a fly on the wall, and on a rare occasion, maybe when it was slow or maybe when Michael wasn't there, I get to watch him do a couple things, but I was not involved in any way in the making of the music or anything like that. I simply was the guy that would go down the street to a restaurant called Stanley's and pick up lunch for the guys. We must have spent, I don't know, $10,000 in lunches at Stanley's, easily, maybe more. Stanley's was a nice little sit-down restaurant that they liked. I would also run out and deliver tapes to other studios, pick up rented equipment. If they got a keyboard or an amp or who knows what, maybe I'd go out and, pick up that, a set of speakers, that kind of thing, do any kind of various runs for anything. I remember Bruce Swedien sent me out once to pick up lutefisk, which is some sort of Swedish, horrible-smelling fish that they wrap in lye poison. Yeah, it was gross. I had to go somewhere and get that. I mean, basically, I was at their mercy, and anything they needed or whatever, of course, I was going to say yes and do my job and go out and get for them. So those were my basic day-to-day experiences there. We were there. A lot of different things happened in the studio. There's a story about the time the wall fell on Michael. We had built up these 2 walls. They're called gobos, studio gobos, and they were 3-section panels like this, and they would sit there on the ground, and then we built another section of panels on top of it, so we'd have like a vocal booth. He'd have privacy. Michael really didn't like anyone watching him when he was singing. I think he would even prefer it if there was a wall in front of him so you couldn't see him. I'm trying to think if maybe we did that. Maybe we had a wall that had like a window and he was tucked away. Anyway, in this case, for whatever reason, we had this other alternative setup with the 2 sections of these folding walls on top of each other. And as he was singing, he liked to dance, and he backed up, bang, into the wall, and the wall came down and hit him on the head. I just saw an interview with him where he said he just thought it was funny, and maybe the next day he realized he might have been hurt a little bit. I seem to remember that we took him out of there right away, called an ambulance, and we're worried about him until we heard that he was okay. If you go online, there are Dangerous demos, the demo of the song Dangerous, and you can hear the wall falling on top of him. I think they've used that sample. And a couple different things related to Michael. Anyway, that was pretty much what I was up to as I was around Michael, every day. We would see people come and go. Famous people came in. Brooke Shields, Madonna came in one day, went back to his secret room, came out a little while later, and it was pretty obvious he was a little disturbed by it. Did not want to spend any more time with Madonna. I think she was trying to maybe get a duet going with him. Didn't happen. It was rumored that she made a move on him. She said in like Carpool Karaoke that she did with James Corden that she did try to make a move on him, or was a little bit sexually aggressive. And that was not going to fly with Michael. And that's when I'll get into saying that although nobody knows what happened behind closed doors, there are terrible accusations about him. They were tried in a court. People looked into these things, and of course he was not found guilty of any of these charges during the time when he was alive. And now that he's gone, what can you say? I mean, the only people that know are the people that were there that are still alive at the present time. What I would say is he had the mentality of a fifth grader. I mean, you couldn't have a conversation with him at any real deep level. Maybe musically you could, and that wasn't something that I got involved in. But as far as current events or just general goings on during the day or whatever, I taught fifth grade for a while, and that's kind of, I feel like, where his conversation level rested. So if you would talk about a girl or some, physical attributes of a woman, or, hey, Michael, are you going to take her out on a date? Or, someone may have joked or whatever at the time. It was a different time back then. You could talk about things you can't talk about now. He would just giggle and laugh and put his head down. He really was not going to entertain or, get into any kind of discussion that had anything to do with sex, women, people's looks, anything. It just was beyond anything that he would be able to do. And for that reason, I just feel like he knew right from wrong. I feel like he just didn't have the real interest that you would need to be some kind of super predator that's out there, preying on these young boys and whatever. He puts himself in some really bad looking situations for an adult man, something that, of course, any normal person would try to avoid, especially after they, were put up on trial and had to settle in one of the cases for a lot of money, and then continued after that to spend time with young 9, 10, 12-year-old boys or whatever, even after those things happened. And, I'm sure anybody would have said, Michael, this is not a good look for you. But I don't think he really thought about it. I don't think his mind worked that way, and I think he just felt comfortable being around kids who were not demanding like adults, who were constantly asking him for money, cars, all this kind of stuff. I would take in piles of letters, and I remember him looking at these letters and saying, this person wants a car from me, Robbie. This person has medical bills. He wants me to pay their medical bills. And, I think he even said, like, is $5,000 enough for a car? And he was, like, writing a check to somebody he didn't even know. So who knows, like, what went on in his relationships with other adults and that sort of thing. But I just feel like in general that he was more comfortable around kids. Maybe they wanted a new pair of shoes or whatever, but, they weren't really looking to find some, angle or agenda where they could get in somehow and take advantage of his kindness. So that's about all I'll say about that. I never saw, heard, was concerned about anything at that time period from 1990 to 1993. He had a private room. He wasn't back there with little boys or anything of this sort. Matter of fact, I think the only younger kids that ever came were his cousins, who were called the 3 T's. It was like Tito's kids and Jermaine's kids, and they were did have a band. And New Kids on the Block, I think, came maybe one time for, again, these are short visits. They didn't hang out. They said hello to Michael and, whatever, chatted for a little bit. I don't even remember that they would go in the studio and watch him do any music or anything. He was too self-conscious for that. So it'd be quick little meetings, and they'd be in and out. And that was about it. All right, well, I don't want to go on forever, but I will just say those are my experiences working with Michael Jackson. In hindsight, of course, it seems like a much bigger deal now than at the time. And, of course, as an adult, I think, boy, why couldn't I have found some way to turn this into some advantageous situation for me? But I was just there doing a job. I was picking up lunch. I was a nobody. I continued to, do that kind of work after for a while until I finally got myself out of that situation and started working in the film business, where I actually did real audio engineering on the sets of feature films and TV shows, which is what I still do to this day, although I took a long break in the middle. Like I said, I became a 5th grade teacher and did some other jobs, but it was amazing to have this formative experience with MJ back in the day. nice, sweet, friendly guy. We had lots of fun experiences racing around remote control motorcycles and doing all sorts of, crazy things, that occurred to him at the time. But mostly, 99% of the time, he was in the studio working. That was it. He would just constantly be going from one room to the other. Like I said, we had 2 or 3 different rooms going. Towards the end, he moved to a whole other studio to work on more songs that ended up on the record with different production engineering teams. But for the stuff that I saw and observed, he just worked all the time. If not, he was maybe in the room by himself taking a nap or something. But that was about it. He even wore the same outfit every day. And at one point I said to myself, Michael Jackson, like, what's going on? He only owns red shirts and black pants or whatever. Like, he doesn't have any other clothes. But then on a Friday, like, they rolled in a whole rack of these pressed red shirts and black pants and took out this dirty laundry bag. And at some point he said, I don't want to think about what I have to wear. This is my studio uniform. I come in, I'm going to wear this every day. I'm going to wear a red button-down shirt, black pants, penny loafers, pink socks, and that's it. I'm done. So that's pretty much all we ever saw him wearing. And nice guy. I miss him. It's terrible what happened. I'm not surprised, given that he really didn't take very good care of himself, didn't really know how to look after himself as an adult. We would have a chef that would come in and cook food for him on a pretty regular basis. And we stocked the fridge every week. We spent $200 on groceries, stocked the fridge with anything drinks, any chips, sandwich meat, bread, anything we could imagine Michael Jackson might want at some point. And I don't think he ever ate anything. I don't think he ever ate any of it that I remember, except for maybe the food that his personal chef cooked. And it was just little pieces of chicken or fish or something or other. It was really pretty minimal. He did like the filet-o-fish sandwich at McDonald's, which was next door. So I used to bring him that on occasion. I actually had to bring him one of everything from the McDonald's menu. That's another story I tell in the book, but I brought it on a platter, and he really didn't even know what they had at McDonald's, or he was just fooling around with me. But in any case, he tried a hamburger, he tried a chicken McNugget, decided, filet-o-fish. Yeah, that's what I like. So from then on, it was filet of fish for Michael anytime he wanted that from McDonald's. But other than that, didn't really take care of himself. He would never just go in the fridge and, make a sandwich, even from this food that his record company was paying for. It just would not occur to him to, look after himself in that way. If food wasn't, provided and given to him, he wouldn't ever search it out on his own or anything like that. I've told all these stories in the book. I thought I was going to wrap up a minute ago, but I'm having such a good time. The other funny experience that I can think of was when he sent me for drawers. He said, Robbie, I need drawers. I knew he meant underwear, and he would send me out with his credit card to do crazy things like fill his truck up with gas, and I'd walk out with Michael Jackson's credit card. Back in the day, nobody would say anything, or I'd just say, it's for Michael Jackson. They'd be like, yeah, all right. They let you fill up his truck. So I went to JCPenney after he told me he wanted Hanes 30. So I went to get him tighty whities. And when I was running out to get him in the parking lot, he said, no, Robbie, Hanes 32. I don't want him to be too tight. So I got the King of Pop tighty whities. There's another stories you can hear in my very short Kindle book that's been out for about 10 years called My Brush with Badness. And fascinating, interesting experience working with that guy. I certainly miss him. It's really terrible if we look at, where we're at now, that we don't have David Bowie and Prince and Michael Jackson, Tom Petty, all these people, and a lot of them died really for no good reason at all, because they just didn't look after themselves. Interestingly, Michael not Michael, but Prince and Tom Petty died for pretty much the same reason. They needed hip replacements. They got hooked on drugs. They didn't want to have the operations, and that killed them. Michael obviously had a problem sleeping and was overprescribed, propofol, sleep anesthetic that they use in, operations in the surgery table, and nothing he should have ever been introduced to. But he's a big star. He's going to get whatever he wants, and he probably, was doctor shopping. And if he didn't find one person that would give it to him, he'd find the next. So Very tragic, unfortunate. We'll stop at 20 minutes here, but yeah, I miss the guy. It was a great experience to be around him, and it was fun to see a giant project like that come together over those many years, and that it still exists today and is talked about, and even got my name on the record. He was nice enough to put the studio runners' names on the record. Maybe the only time in history that ever happened. There's no way I could even find another project where they would have put my name on there just working as a studio gopher. But for whatever reason, I assume it was at Michael's insistence he did it, and my name is sitting on there. So, all right, that's it. Checking out for now, and we'll talk to you later.